Hi friends! Today we're talking about big picture management and goals for your farm, ranch, or homestead. It doesn't matter if you have a few acres or a few hundred. It's important to have a plan. I'm going to walk you through our plan for livestock and land, talk about why we've made some of the decisions we've made, and our plans for the future. This is and will always be a work in progress, so I expect I'll be doing updates every so often as we learn more and apply that knowledge to our plan. Let's get to it. Hey friends, welcome to the Get Goatwise podcast. Are you longing to raise goats and other animals for food but don't know where to start? Do you want to be more self-sufficient and less dependent on the grocery store? Do you wish you had a mentor to walk you through raising livestock? Hi, I'm Millie, animal scientist, cattle girl turned goat rancher, co-owner of Dry Creek Livestock, and simple living enthusiast. For 15 years, I've been on a mission to raise all of our own meat, eggs, and dairy. Here, we'll talk about raising goats and other homestead livestock, how to create sustainable animal management systems that actually work, and a bit of off-grid life with kids and livestock. If you're ready to take control of your food supply, raise livestock with confidence, and provide your family with the most nourishing meat, eggs, and dairy available, you're in the right place. Kick off your muck boots, pour a cup of coffee, and let's talk livestock. Hey there. Do you want to hang out with like-minded folks who are also interested in raising their own livestock and seeking self-sufficiency? Inside the free Raising Goats and Homestead Livestock community, you'll get tips on raising goats and other livestock and ideas to increase your self-sufficiency. Join now at bit.ly/getgoatwisecommunity. You can also become an insider and get weekly emails from me with the latest podcast episode, stories from the ranch, tips on raising goats and other livestock, real-life information about self-sufficiency and living off-grid, and early bird access to special offers. Sign up at getgoatwise.com/insider. What's happening on the ranch? The sun is shining and it's been beautiful outside with temps reaching into the 60s and even 70s Fahrenheit. Of course, we're still freezing at night, which is normal here, but we're enjoying the nice temperatures while we have them. Dairy does are due to start kidding tomorrow, so we'll be checking on them pretty regularly. We finished all of the replacement doe selection and sorting out the rest of the goat kids. We chose 25 replacement does, and we kept 5 extra that are available for sale, but we'd be happy to keep them if they don't sell. Then we picked 10 kids for processing next week, and the rest were loaded up to sell. We made the trip to Colorado and sold 45 goats. It's always nostalgic for me to travel that route because that's where I went to college many years ago, and now it's become a livestock hauling route instead of the college commute. Shout out to Centennial Livestock Auction. They did a great sort on our goats and the sale was first class. We're doing some pasture mowing, knocking down leftover forage so it can serve as moisture retaining thatch instead of choking itself out. This is stuff that the goats won't eat unless we put a massive amount of grazing pressure on it, so we're giving ourselves a fresh start this spring. We are planning some pasture projects this year that'll raise some eyebrows and give the locals something to talk about, and when we get rolling on that, I'll share what we're doing. I'm sure we'll have some failures, but this is about learning and trying some different ways to build soil and restore this land we've been blessed to steward. The only way to make progress is to try. As I'm sure you can hear, the roosters have been moved a little closer to where I record the podcast. Friday, we had a group of sheep ranchers from Chile come tour our place. I had a first-time experience of talking through an interpreter, and that's a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. I know the interpreter was exhausted after 2 hours of facilitating communication, but it was fun. Fortunately, he had an animal science background, so there were only a handful of words that we struggled to translate. As we talked about our production system and why we do things the way we do it, it got me thinking that I've never really dedicated an episode just to talking about the bigger picture goals that guide our management decisions. This is an ever-evolving process as we learn new things and shift what we're doing to better align with our goals. I used to get frustrated when we'd try something and it didn't work out. Now I see that as a critical part of the process. Sometimes the best lessons are learning what not to do. Our overarching goal is to work with nature, not against it. As far as our livestock production cycle, we want to align that cycle with the natural cycle of available forage nutrients. We also want to embrace our unique environment and climate to support our production system instead of wishing it was different. Just a little bit about our climate. Our elevation is about 6,300 feet. We have really high UV. The sun here is intense in the summer. Our frost-free growing season is about 52 days, and if you get on Farmer's Almanac for gardeners and put in our zip code, it will tell you not to bother to garden here because there's always a frost risk. Our annual precipitation is 9 to 11 inches. So that all put together is a little bit challenging, but so is everybody else's climate. We all have our challenges. What are the benefits of our environment? Well, parasites don't thrive here. We do have parasites, but because we're dry and we get really cold, they don't proliferate like they do in warmer, moister environments. The high UV and extreme cold often kill disease-causing organisms in the soil and on the surface of equipment that thrive and spread disease in warmer, wetter climates. We're pretty much limited to cool season forage, but cool season grasses generally have higher nutrient quality than warm season grasses, meaning we don't need to produce as much to meet the nutritional needs of our livestock. Now, I'm actually questioning that narrative that I've always been told that we can only do cool season grasses here. We are actually going to plant some warm season annuals and see what happens. 8 out of 10 years here, our snow cover is shallow enough that we can extend grazing on stockpiled forages and the livestock can still access it. I was raised on a very progressive ranch that practiced rotational grazing and holistic management with cattle, and I think we can improve on that by focusing not only on forage health, but possibly more importantly, soil health. This is a process and we have so much to learn. How are we changing our management to thrive in our environment? For the livestock, we're planning breeding so that green grass is available when livestock nutrient requirements are the highest, kidding and lactation. Some years take longer for grass to come than others, so we have a backup plan in place. In the future, we would love to be stockpiling forage for grazing before new growth appears. We already do some of this in the river bottom. In fact, the horses were not fed any supplemental hay the last 2 years, and they look great. When we adjusted our breeding schedule to make sure kids were born and lactation was occurring when the forage could best support that, it turns out that the goats are most fertile at that time when we needed to be breeding them. So not only are we kidding at the optimum time, but we have a higher rate of multiples, and we only have a couple of open does each year. We also choose animals that fit our environment, and we are vigilant about genetic drift and progress. So first you need to pick your criteria. What's important, what genetic traits are important for you where you're at in your environment? And then you need to cull hard. That means removing goats from the herd that do not fit your system. As far as our goats, we want a herd of goats that will winter easily, maintain condition, have their kids out in the pasture, get them up and going, produce adequate milk but not too much, and protect them with as little interference from us as possible. Smaller goats require less feed for maintenance than larger goats. We don't want to raise dwarfs here, though, as we need kids that are a marketable size. Moderate-sized goats with optimum production traits have potential for the most profit as their feed inputs are lower and they can easily wean more pounds of kids as a percentage of their body weight. Moderate-sized does also deter predators better than dwarfs or minis, and their ability to maintain body temperature in our cold climate is better than dwarfs or minis. Lactation is nutritionally expensive. Look at high-producing dairy animals. a lot of times they're a rack of bones. It's simply because they draw on all of their reserves to produce milk. Just because an animal is feeding its offspring instead of putting milk in your bucket, it's still the same. Lactation is expensive. We've been working toward this since the first commercial goats joined our herd in 2018. And the only way we can make progress on this is to keep detailed records and have good animal identification. When I talk about culling animals, that's C-U-L-L, that means we're removing animals from the breeding herd. What do we do with those animals? Sometimes they will be a perfect fit for somebody else's farm or ranch, so we will sell those. Sometimes they are a problem and they are going to butcher. The types of things that we will cull for are open and dry does. Dry does are does who don't wean a kid that year when we bring them in. Does with bad udder structure or too much milk production. Remember, lactation is expensive, and poor udders are a lot of work. If you have to help every kid suckle, that's too much. Poor mothering instinct. If a doe won't take care of her kids, she's going to the sale. High maintenance hooves. I've talked about this before, and this is probably pretty specific to us, but it's a lot to trim the feet on a whole bunch of goats several times a year. So does that are chronic problems with their feet are going to be culled. Susceptibility to parasites. Now remember, we don't have huge parasite issues here, so that's really fortunate for us, and it doesn't happen often, but occasionally we will have a goat that just continually has a parasite load, and we don't want to reproduce those genetics that are susceptible to parasites, so we will go ahead and cull a doe that does that. What are future culling criteria? When we get our herd to the size that we want it, we will cull more aggressively for does that have singles regularly. Now, we already cull for this a little bit. We allow our first time does to have singles, but if they perpetually have a single after that, they will go ahead and get culled. Does that have had twins or triplets and then single, we'll give them another chance right now. In the future, that won't be the case. Remember the show goats we had? That's how we got started in goats, but we sold the entire herd a year ago. Why did we do that? Raising them didn't align with our goals anymore. This is what I'm talking about. We were kidding in January. January is brutal here. We had to pen and feed hay in July and August during breeding season to keep the buck contained. July and August are some of our prime grazing times. They just did not fit our environment. They were big does with high milk production, sometimes marginal mothering. It was just hard. Everything about it was hard. I'm not picking on the show goat people at all. It's just not what fits our goals and operation anymore. As far as the cattle herd, we're in the beginning stages, so just like we did with the goats, we're working on growing numbers, and then we'll be selecting and culling. A lot of the criteria will be the same as for the goats. Smaller frame size, moderate to lower milk production, good udder structure, structurally sound, easy keeper, good mothering ability, and weaning a calf every year. The common thread here is identifying the type of animal that will thrive in your environment and support your bigger goals, whatever they are. Land management. I like to dream about what this area looked like before people showed up. There were probably herds of buffalo grazing at high density and short duration, moving on to new pasture each day. I'm sure the diversity of plants was much more than it is now, and I'd guess that sagebrush wasn't as dominant. I suspect the organic matter in the soil was higher and bare ground was much harder to find. Because the soil was probably healthier, it held moisture and provided nutrients to support the forage growth even in our limited rainfall environment. Maybe my vision is wrong. Maybe this has always been the way it is now. But what if I'm right? What if this land has the capacity to grow abundant forage in a bitter cold, low moisture climate? If that's the case, then we have a responsibility to support that vision and utilize our resources to make it a reality again. What are we doing right now to move toward that goal? We're reading, studying, and learning a lot. We're using what we already know about high-density, short-duration grazing and applying that in the best way we know until we figure out the logistics of how to do it better. We're researching easier ways to use electric fence for both goats and cattle. Electric netting is a big job on a daily basis with the number of goats we have. It's been great, but we need a more efficient solution. We're defining our really big goals and then figuring out the steps we need to take and things we need to try to reach those goals. Tactically, this year we're going to try to seed some annuals that are proven to revive depleted soils. We'll be spreading some compost on test plots, adding thatch to help hold moisture. We're looking at ways to support the microbiome in the soil, whether that's inoculating to speed things up or trusting that the microorganisms are already in there and will work their magic once we provide the right environment for them. We'll probably do both and see what works best. Test plots. Lots of test plots. Testing out different seeds and seed combinations, seeding methods, grazing impact, etc. We'll be looking at ways to extend the grazing season and reduce our dependence on purchased hay. When we're feeding hay, we'll do that out on range so the litter and manure can benefit the soil instead of piling up in the night trap. We need more infrastructure to do this effectively, so that's in the works. We did do some bale grazing out on pasture last fall to test it out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what those areas look like this year. We'll be doing soil testing to measure progress. This focus on the soil is new to us, as the focus we've been around in range management was more about what's on top of the soil and less about what's happening in the soil, so we'll be learning a lot. What we won't be doing. We will not be using synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, or fungicides. We've never done this, but it's common around here, so we do get the effects sometimes. Routine deworming or antibiotics. We haven't done either of these in a long time. We'll check the FAMACHA score on a goat that looks suspicious and treat for parasites if necessary, as well as using antibiotics if that's the best course of treatment for a sick animal. Knowing that dewormers and antibiotics have a negative effect on soil health is motivation to eliminate or at least limit use. I think that as our ranch ecosystem heals and improves, many of the issues we see now will resolve on their own. We're seeking improvement and balance here, not perfection. I hope this episode helps you look at management and production from a bigger perspective, and maybe even look at changing things up to work with your environment in simple ways. Because when we fight nature, ultimately, we all lose. The animals lose, the land degrades, and our profitability suffers. You don't have to go all in at once. Set your goals and work on small changes. See what works and what doesn't, and before long, you'll be reaping the benefits of aligning your homestead or farm with the environment you're living in. If you have questions, come on over to the community and start a conversation. That's at bit.ly/getgoatwisecommunity. See you next week. Hey there, thanks for listening today. I'm so glad you're here. If this episode helped you or encouraged you in some way, share the link with your homesteading friends. And if you really want to help me out, click on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and a review. You can connect with me on Instagram or email linked in the show notes, and meet me back here soon for more Get Goat Wise.